Hello friends, welcome back. We've reached, honestly, one of my favorite parts of the process. The first touch of the ink on the page. I ended the last video with almost an overwhelming sense of dread that this was coming, and I'm not 100% sure why. I did get up and have lunch in between, so maybe I was just hungry. I think it's just because I've set a monumental amount of work in front of myself. Not the first time this has happened, nor will it be the last. So, let's get started. You know, first thing we're gonna do, like we always do, turn it blue. Nothing turned blue. How come? Wrong folder. Remember when I had this copy that I couldn't get rid of? I'm glad I kept it for peace of mind purposes. Something that I was talking about in the previous episode, and then I lost my train of thought. And actually, here's an important thing that I need to look up real quick, and it's, does Laios have gloves? I don't think he does. He doesn't, no. And I talked about gloves before too, about gloves are, you know, gloves are for liars. And Laios is not a liar. Constantly losing my train of thought. This is the curse of being me. We're gonna start in a weird place. We're gonna start with Kensuke. Get there someday. Oh my. I was talking about webcomics. And one of the things I was going to complain about. This is like the theme of this week. Just like, the internet is changing. The internet is always changing, I suppose. But so look, I was really into webcomics. In the early days. They weren't even the early days of webcomics when I was reading webcomics, honestly. They were the middle days of webcomics. Because the really early days of webcomics is like the late 90s and the early 2000s. And this was like the mid 2000s. But you were starting to see webcomics that were becoming, you know, wildly successful. And people who were making a living off of making webcomics. And that was my first brush with wanting to do this as a career, right? And my plan, this was back before I even picked up a pen to draw. Because I wasn't going to draw it, I was just going to write it. And we can work that. I wasn't going to draw it, I was just going to write it. And that was my plan, we're going to have a wildly successful webcomic. I was going to write like 3 strips a week, and that was the only work I was going to have to do. Wrong. But that was like the thing is you're trying to crack the code of like how to work and be successful in art and in comics. And it was like the problem is it was a new and changing thing. So I think in a lot of cases you looked to the people who you saw as like the masters for how they could give you advice on you know, how to be successful. And the problem really is that a lot of them didn't really know how they became successful. Didn't know how to reproduce the result. And even the ones that did, who could give you like a step-by-step explanation of how they created their comic and how they made it popular, by the time that they were in a position to say we're really successful and we're ready to give you advice, the rules had changed completely and that advice no longer applied. In the case of something like Penny Arcade, which does Penny Arcade still make comics? I don't actually know. They probably do. I don't see why they wouldn't. Despite the fact that, I guess the Expo is where they probably make most of their money these days. But I don't like that here. It's like, ask Penny Arcade how to be successful as a webcomic. And it's like, well, just be the first gamer webcomic. And everybody will flock to it. But the one piece of advice that I think still holds to this day is from Scott Kurtz, who wrote a comic called PvP. And it wasn't so much advice on how to be successful as it was advice on what not to expect. Right? And he was saying that, everybody who works in comics seems to expect that Stan Lee is going to hop out of the TARDIS one day and say, hey, kid, come on, we're going to the big time. And that is not how it works. It's lots and lots of toiling in obscurity. Something that I proudly do to this very day. Slightly less obscure than I used to be. Still obscure, which is fine. I love working for indie clients. Of course I would take work from a big publisher if one ever came along and decided they wanted me. But in terms of I need to look at another Kensuke reference. Stuff that I should have taken care of in the sketch. C'est la vie. Alright. One more time. One more time for America. Comes out of the top of the hill. Did I have this whole thing upside down? Wings point downward toward the dragon head, toward the handle of the sword. Which way? Which way does the mollusk pop out of the sword? He lives in the hill. Okay. That's what I thought. We can work this. What was I talking about? Webcomics and being successful. Toiling in obscurity. Working for indie clients. I like working for indie clients. Because it feels a lot like the Wild West in some ways. You can do kind of whatever you want. And I've gotten to do some really fun and really awesome and creative things with a lot of really cool people who I feel lucky to consider friends and colleagues, you know? And of course I love working on my own material as well. Maybe should have put a little more into the pencil on this part, but I think it's workable. A trick to the day-to-day survival of being a comicer is locking into positivity in one way or another. Which is not to say being foolhardy, but focusing on your wins and what they mean for you. Not dwelling so much on your challenges. Or if you do dwell on your challenges, treating them as opportunities for improvement. And you will have plenty of opportunities for improvement. You know, just continuing to be a fan of your own work and of the work of your friends and your peers and of famous things that everybody loves. It all helps. I'm going to do that thing where I check to make sure I actually started the timer, because half the time I don't. I did! Just stick it in the corner so I can see it. So I'm kind of going foreground to background on this. It's just an easiest way for me to keep track of what's going on. Get a little myopic with the way you kind of work on this when you get to the ink stage, so. Check on the larger image once in a while to make sure that I'm making a huge mess of it, but for the most part I think we're going to be alright. Breaking some of my own rules like I like to do. I always say to trust the pencil, but sometimes you can just see that the pencil is wrong. Oh, well, Betsky, you silly fool. Get your mesh on. It's 3. It's fine. Less talking, more drawing. You know, my general hope, I think, is that people come here more for the drawing than the talking, so... If I had to pick one, I'd pick the drawing. I sometimes do this. They get all these little odds and ends. Weakness of my inking. I want the inking to look clean, but I don't want it to look stiff, you know? I want the objects to look solid, but I don't want them to look artificial. I always like to make sure that you look at this and you know that a human being drew it. Alright, hey, it's time for the plug. Did you know that maybe the best free way that you can help out this channel is to like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, turn on notifications so that you know when new videos are posted. And if you're really feeling froggy, you can share it with a friend, which would be great. I am a self-taught artist. Hopefully some of the things that I do, if you're trying to learn how to draw, or if you're just trying to learn some new tricks, I can maybe help you out with. Give it a shot. Put something in the comments if you have a question or anything like that too. I always read the comments, and I do my best to answer them. If you'd like to help out in a more financial way, links in the description. Check out my Ko-fi page, leave a one-time donation, or maybe sign up for a recurring monthly membership tier. Exclusive content, including my Drawing Through Dragon Ball video series, some exclusive comics stuff that's coming up. It's going to be sub-only, art, all fan art polls, all kinds of cool stuff going on there. Of course, my free newsletter on Substack, link in the description. You can also sign up for a paid tier there if you're interested in the same kind of stuff that you would see on Ko-fi, but just in a different medium delivered straight to your inbox. It's all there for the taking, and I appreciate every little bit. Thank you so much for joining me today, working on this. Come back tomorrow, we're going to do some more, and we are slowly chipping away at this giant Dungeon Meshi poster, and I will see you tomorrow.